Good afternoon. It's good to see everybody. I'm Janet Miller. I'm the vice chair of, are we going to have an echo thing, you think? One moment, please. Good. Okay. I'm vice chair of the Metro Transit Authority, and Gail is with her family, I believe, in another state. So you're going to have to put up with the amateur today. So I thank you ahead for your patience. So we will start off by having our roll call. So Aaron Thompson.
Here.
Jessica Dolphin.
Present.
Catherine Hayes Sasser.
Here.
And we're missing Gail, who is not with us today. So, and Margaret Bem, do we call on Margaret?
No, you don't. I'm here.
But you are here. I just wanted to be sure you were here, Margaret. You're my security blanket, so there you go. So everybody got a copy of the minutes from October 26th in your read-ahead package. Are there any adjustments or changes on the minutes? If not, then I would take a motion to approve.
A motion to approve the minutes.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have minutes. We have minutes, as Gail would say. So great. Okay, next we have our public comment period. And we are delighted to have Mr. John Bull with us today. And I will remind you that we have a 2-minute limit, and my little chime will go off, Mr. Bull, at the end of the 2 minutes. But thank you for being here.
You're welcome, and thank you. I'll watch the clock. I reside in Northern Antioch, 370 Wallace Road, frequent rider. I am really impressed with the skill and the motivation of the bus operators. They've got it down. They really do. It's more than nice. I just have to make that point. It's the system runs really well, and they do a really good job. The schedule changes coming up in April, and the package that has come out recently, it looks like there's some funding and some attention being paid to the system. And as Martha Stewart would say, that's a good thing. The nuance is the cross-down connectors, 77, 75, whatever the hopefully soon to be restored Bell Road connector between Mercersboro Road and Nolensville Pike, maybe throwing in a connection to Century Farms and Tangier Outlet, just a thought. That's really all I've got to say. And again, I'm getting tingles down the back of my scalp. I'm really impressed with the bus operators.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Bull.
Thank you for your time.
And Mr. Bull gave us a smiley face on his piece of paper, so thanks for that. That made our day. So are there any other comments from anyone here? Well, if not, then we will close the public comment period. Thank you, Mr. Bull. Okay, so next up on the agenda, we have our information-only items, and these are items that are very routine that we provide ahead of the program. Would anybody like to move anything off of the information-only item list? Are you good with it? All good? Okay, great. And then we usually have a consent agenda, and we had 2 items on the consent agenda for today. I've been notified that the first, MA 23-039, that the staff would like to pull that from the consent agenda. So that leaves us with one item on the consent agenda, which was the Allied Universal Service Extension. Is there a motion to approve that, or would anybody like to pull that from the consent agenda down onto the normal agenda?
A motion to pull the MA 23039 from consent agenda.
Great. And would you like to also approve the Allied Universal Service Extension?
and approve the Allied Service extension.
I told you I don't know what I'm doing up here, so is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any other comment? Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Consent agenda passes. Excellent. I'm getting my sea legs underneath me. This is good. So next up, we have our Operations and Finance Committee, and I will hand it over to you, Jessica, for that portion of our agenda.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Chair for the day.
Chair of the day.
Chair for the day. Thank you so much. Happy to work through the Operations and Finance Committee today. First up is Ed Oliphant, who will be talking about the fiscal year 2023 annual audit report. That is MA 23041. Here we go, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm up here briefly. I'm glad to and happy to introduce Erica Sager, the partner on this audit, and I will let her make the presentation.
It's your meeting. You go.
Welcome, Erica. Good to see you.
Thank you. So good to see you all. Happy to be here today. Before we get into the fiscal year 23 report, I want to revisit fiscal year 22 very briefly and give you an update on fiscal year 22. So similar to MTA and all other organizations that are required to have an audit, our firm is also audited by the state with a desk review. We're also peer reviewed, and we're also any audits that have single audit or federal expenditures are subject to review by the OIG. And this past summer, the MTA fiscal year 22 report was selected by the OIG for review of our firm's work.
Of course, I know what OIG stands for.
Sorry.
But for the rest of the room?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Office of the Inspector General.
Appreciate it.
Sure. So they came to our or they reviewed the file and the report for last year. If you'll recall, last year we did have one management letter item where during our single audit work, we noted that there was one vendor. It was Wootson for the land lease that had not signed up on the SAMS database. We did go through all the proper procedures. We contacted the federal agency in charge, FTA, went through it. They wouldn't give us a determination and said, we're going to leave it up to auditor's discretion, whether that's a finding or not. So based on our discussions with management, based on our discussions with Ed and management, and based on the fact that all the required forms, they self-certified that they were not suspended or debarred from the federal website, and they had also registered on the SAMS website. They just had a backlog. All of that was done before we issued our audit report, so we did not include it as a finding. We just included it as a management letter comment to make sure that going forward, regardless of what vendor is used, that they are certified and not included on that suspension or debarment list. The OIG did not like that and said they wanted to see it as a finding, so we had to reissue the report with that as a finding. It did not change any numbers. It didn't change the opinion. It still remained an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. It just included that as a finding in the report. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions?
I won't even pretend that I know, and this isn't for the benefit of everyone in the room. What is the SAMS website?
It's a website that you go onto and certify that you are not suspended or debarred. So any auditor...
From any federal government programs?
That is right. You have to ensure that you aren't suspended or debarred before federal funds can be paid to that vendor.
And it's a requirement on us when we're dealing with vendors that we check the database to make sure anyone we're doing business with isn't on that list.
And you'll see, we'll get to it in the report, that finding, like I said, was correct. It was corrected before we even issued our fiscal year 22 report. But our hope was that the OIG would see that it was corrected before we issued and would understand and pass on that, but they did not, so.
Okay, great.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, one quick question. So this is an amendment to the audit report, or is it just redacted, it's just a brand new report with that in there?
It was just a new report that was issued with that finding in the back.
Okay.
That's the only thing that changed. No numbers changed, opinions did not change, just that finding was included. And it was included with management's corrective action plan, which was, it was already corrected before we issued. So. Just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware. So what we'll do, we'll move into the fiscal year 23 report. First, we'll go over this first booklet with the picture on the front. Professional standards require that we communicate certain information to you regarding the audit, and this book serves as that formal communication. If you turn to page 1, it is a letter from Crossland to you, thanking you first for the opportunity to continue as your external auditors and your business advisors, and to also explain that a direct line of communication between us and you is a very important part of this audit process. And finally, we want to take this opportunity to express our appreciation to Ed and the team. As usual, they were prepared for us. They were ready for when we came on site, and they were very responsive to all of our needs during the audit process. At the top of page 2, report on the results of the June 30, 2023 audit. We did issue an unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean opinion or the best opinion you can receive. As I mentioned previously, the state of Tennessee does have oversight responsibility for the audit process, and they did approve our engagement through their CARS website. And I'm happy to report that for fiscal year 23, MTA will meet all federal, state, and local government deadlines. We're currently in the process of inputting the information in the data collection form for the OIG for 23. Our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards and uniform guidance is to plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement and that they are fairly presented in accordance with United States generally accepted accounting principles. Top of page 3, significant accounting policies for MTA are noted in note A. And based on our review, we do believe that the accounting policies are reasonable and comprehensive. At the bottom of page 3, we did include certain sensitive management judgments and estimates that affect the financial statements. We did look at the assumptions used in determining these judgments and estimates and did determine that they are reasonable in the relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. Top of page 4, there were no alternative accounting treatments noted. During the audit, we did have 4 adjusting journal entries, and we also had 5 journal entries that were client requested during the audit process. Those were just journal entries that were given to us after the trial balance had been given to us. We did look at those in conjunction with our substantive testing, and we did include those in this communication in Appendix B. There were no unrecorded entries during the audit. Included in Appendix A to this communication is the written representations for management. And at the bottom of page 4, other material written communications. We did not have a management letter for fiscal year 23. We did have one finding that is noted in the report that we'll go over. And because it was issued as a finding, we did not issue a separate management letter. Top of page 5, we had no disagreements with management. Consultations with other independent accountants. In some cases, management might seek to talk to another accountant or auditor about certain matters. Professional standards require that if that happens, the consulting firm talk to us to make sure they have the relevant facts. And to our knowledge, there were no such consultations with other accountants. Other than signing the engagement letter, there were no issues discussed prior to the retention of Crossland as independent auditors. We had no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There were no fraudulent or illegal acts noted during the audit process, nor were any fraudulent or illegal acts disclosed to us by management or the board. At the bottom of page 5, information and documents containing the audited financial statements. MTA's audited financial statements are included in the ACFR, or the financial statements for Metro government, and we're not aware of any other documents that will contain MTA's financial statements. At the top of page 6, this includes our areas of audit emphasis. These are the areas where we spent the majority of our time during the audit process. Every year, we do want to confirm to you that we are independent with respect to MTA. And on pages 6 and 7, our recent accounting pronouncements. Over probably the past 4 years, this list has been much, much longer. All of these are being implemented each year as they become effective, and we will work with management to ensure that these upcoming pronouncements are implemented into the financial statements as they do become effective. Pages 8 through 16 are the management representation letter that I discussed a few minutes ago. This does go through and say that management gave us all the information we need during the audit process, that was complete and accurate. And you can see on page 16, it was signed by all the members of management. Then on page 17 and 18, this is the list of adjusting entries that were made during the audit process. Again, 4 of those were actual audit adjustments and the rest were client requested entries. Does anyone have any questions on the required communications? Okay, we will switch over to the financial statements. If you will flip over to pages 3 through 6, this is the independent auditor's report. And again, it is an unmodified or clean opinion. Pages 7 through 20 are management's discussion of analysis. And this just basically represents all the highlights that management feels is important for the reader to know about the financials for fiscal year 23. If you flip over to page 21, this begins the actual statements themselves. Page 21 is the statements of net position. And I'm just going to go over a few of the most significant changes for you. At the top of page 21, receivables from federal, state, and local governments. You can see that was an increase of about $7.9 million, and mainly that was due to timing at year end versus receiving the grants prior to year end in the previous fiscal year. Cash and cash equivalents for restricted funds. You can see in the prior year it was $381,000, and the current year it was $3. And that relates to insurance proceeds in the prior year that was for the damaged bus for the engine fire, and those funds were expended in the current year for a new bus. Right below that are your capital assets and right-of-use assets, net of accumulated depreciation and amortization. The significant increase there is due to a few things. One, there was approximately $38.8 million in additions in the current year, mainly the new buses and vans and also the additions to the North Nashville Transit Center. And that was offset by approximately $22.2 million in depreciation expense in the current year. In addition to that, I know for those that were on the board last year, we had a lengthy discussion about the land lease and the right of use asset that was implemented last year. It was about $7 million. And in the current year, that number is now netted with your capital assets to comply with both state and metro reporting requirements so that it's similar across the board. At the bottom of page 21, all of the deferred outflows of resources are related to your pension and other employment benefits, other post-employment benefits. Those were based on actuary valuations, and we did look at the assumptions used to determine those values and determine that they were reasonable. On page 22, some of the significant changes to point out are notes payable. In the current year, you can see it was $7 million. And again, that's basically due to timing at year end. So because the grant funds weren't received before year end, we used the short-term note payable to pay what we needed to pay. And then once those grant funds came in, we paid that note payable off in July of 23. So it's just a timing issue between the two. The middle of page 22, the right of use lease liability. This is the offset to your right of use asset for that land lease. And you can see that that number is exactly the same as the prior year. This number will remain exactly the same until the fiscal year 2072. I know we chuckled about this last year.
Gail will still be here.
So in 2072, that liability will start amortizing down because at that point you have paid all of the interest related to that liability and you'll begin paying on the principal. And then at the bottom of page 22, your net pension liability, net other post-employment benefits, all of that again is based on the actuary valuation. At the bottom of page 22, your changes in net position, we will go through that on page 23. So highlights from the statements of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Passenger fares, you can see, were increased over the prior year, and that's mainly due to the continued gradual recovery in ridership. For operating expenses, The major increases there relate to labor and fringe benefits, and the majority of that is related to your OPEB and pension expenses and the changes within those. Again, based off the actuary valuation as well. Middle of page 23, your non-operating revenues, the most significant increase there relates to your local operating assistance. And again, it's just the increases of the metro budget. Bottom of page 23, your capital contributions, there was a significant increase there, and that was due to the eligible capital grant contributions being utilized in the current year versus the prior year. But the main increases for that relate to the buses and the paratransit vans that had been on back order for several years. So overall, a change in net position of $10.9 million for fiscal year 23. I won't go through the cash flows or the statements of fiduciary net position, because mainly the statements of fiduciary net position relate to your pension and OPEB. And again, those are based on the actuary valuations. Pages 29 through 68 are your notes to the financial statements. These do go through and point out some of your more significant line items and give you detail on those balances. We will flip over to, if you want to flip to page 85, just so you can see this lease thing one more time. You can see, this is an amortization schedule of your lease liability over the life of the lease. And you can see that in 2072, that's when it starts amortizing. And if you flip over to pages 89 and 90, this is your independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. And as you see on page 90, the results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported. Moving over to pages 91 through 93, this is the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. This is the report that discusses our findings over the single audit. And if you flip over to page 93, at the top of 93, under other matters, it says that the results of our auditing procedures did disclose one instance of non-compliance that was required to be reported. And it has been reported as a finding number 2023-001 on page 95. So 95 through 98 discuss the findings and questions cost for the issues noted during our single audit test work. In testing the cash management compliance requirement for MTA's major program, it was noted that MTA's Grants and Special Projects Administrator requested federal drawdowns for allowable reimbursable subrecipient grant expenditures 4 days in advance of MTA accounting making payments to the vendor. Therefore, MTA did not commit itself for initiating cash drawdowns for immediate disbursement no later than 3 business days as required. There were 2 instances noted. The money was drawn down and then paid to the vendor 4 days, and it's required to be made within 3 days. So we recommend that MTA consistently adhere to the disbursement timing requirements of the grant, and the MTA draw down the federal funding when vendors or subrecipients have allowable expenditures that are going to occur within that 3 business day period. And on page 98, we have included management's corrective action plan, and the date of completion of that corrective action plan was the date of our audit report. One more thing to point out on page 97, this is your prior audit findings and question costs. This is where you can see now that that prior year finding we just talked about for fiscal year 22 has been corrected. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Erica. Yes,
You're
are
welcome.
there any questions? That was very thorough.
I know it's a lot.
It was
Well,
a
if you
lot.
think of other questions, please reach out. Ed has our contact information, and we're happy to answer questions.
I appreciate your work on this. Thank you, Ed, and to the finance team for making it, and being ready for Roslyn when they came. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say one thing. We really appreciate Crossland and all the time they spend with us. But I want you to know that she just showed an incredible amount of professionalism in talking about the fiscal year 22 audit, because what the OIG conclusion was pretty crazy, to be honest. And I just applaud her for her professionalism, because I've seen her a little bit more upset about that than she showed today. So, thank you, Erica.
Thank you. So, I guess I need to motion as the, committee to the board to accept the annual audit report.
Great. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Only discussion I want to add is it is a lot of work going through an audit like this for Crossland and for our team. So way to go. There are no better words in the English language than clean audit. So with that, we will take a vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. I'm going to do this. Okay, because I could, right?
Now it's official.
Okay. Erica, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Okay,
And
continuing.
I could think of one better phrase about an audit is that it's over.
It's over. Correct. Very good. Very good. Okay.
They're never over.
As the audit from 22 proves, they're not over. All right, so up next in the Operations and Finance Committee, we have Kia Lewis is going to walk us through construction administration services for the North Nashville Transit Center. That is on page 20 of our books, MA 23042.
There we go. All right. Good afternoon to Madam Vice Chair and distinguished board members. My name is Kia Lewis. I am the project manager for the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. So I am here before you today to ask for additional funds for the construction administration services for the North Nashville Transit Center. Now, if you remember, in October of 2021, the board authorized the CEO to enter into a $647,821 contract. That was a 36-month contract with Vivid One Architecture. And that was to provide construction administration and related services to support the North Nashville Transit Center project. Then, with it being planned construction of 12 months. Now, meetings were held with contractor community prior to the construction bid solicitation, which indicated that a 12-month duration would increase the construction cost beyond the project budget. The bid documents required the bidders to include their planned construction duration as a material part of their bid. ICF Megan Construction, which was a joint venture, was awarded as the construction contractor. Now, their bid included a total construction duration of 480 days, which is 16 months. Since the project's November 2022 construction start, the Vivid One team has been providing full-time, on-site construction administration services. Construction of the transit center is over 60% complete. On this project, we are fortunate to have brought on the services of the Vivid One team, who have been essential in both keeping the project on track and supporting us with project documentation. As many of our contractors lack in-house capacity for these types of administrative support services, we need to account for this in future projects. The Vivid One team is spending more hours and providing more direction to the contractor than was originally anticipated. As a team has assumed the lead role in managing the contractor's submittal schedule, coordinating subcontractors' work and permit reviews with utilities, providing quality control for the contractor's administrative tasks, including payment and change order documentation. In addition to the expanded scope of work being undertaken by Vivid One, the additional construction period will add more time to their ongoing work commitment. So the recommendation is staff requests that the board provide the chief executive officer the authority to increase the value of the Vivid One architecture contract to provide construction administration services for the Clarksville Pike and 26th Avenue North Transit Center by a total of $345,775 to provide the additional construction administration services needed. This will bring the total with a not to exceed of $993,596. These funds will be drawn from the available project contingency funds and will not impact the overall project budget. The contract is funded by the North Nashville Transit Center project budget, and the funds are local, state, and federal sources. So I'll entertain any questions.
Does the board have any questions for Kia?
I did have one. At the last board meeting, we talked about for future projects, focusing on standardization and maybe bringing some building out sort of in-house skill sets and talents.
Yes.
Is the work being done by Vivid One the type of work you're envisioning bringing in-house sort of going forward?
Yes, I think that once we have the in-house capacity to kind of assist with everything that we have that's actually on the books or that's going online, we want to make sure that we have some of that skill set in-house as well. And so, yes, we are looking for that as well.
Okay.
There would be some of that, but I would anticipate, particularly on projects the magnitude of North Nashville, that we would still have some form of construction management and
Definitely.
administration services.
Definitely.
Got it.
Because they're essentially on site pretty much permanently.
Got it.
You mentioned that it was coming from contingency. Where are we at on contingency, and how does this play as far as moving forward in the future?
Sure. Our contingency right now, we have a 70% contingency that's remaining. Our contingency for this project was $1.6 million. We're roughly at $1.1 million, including this into that. So we still have approximately 70% of the contingency that will be remaining to move forward with the project as well.
My only question is, how are we doing on timing?
Timing as in
Delivery?
Schedule.
Yes.
the schedule.
Yeah.
We're currently on target for our spring of 2024. We talked about that in my update last month, but we're still on target for that. They're moving very well. If you happen to go by North Nashville, you'll see that the steel is up, and it is definitely moving. So we are progressing, especially with this good weather. We're utilizing everything that we possibly can to make sure that this project stays on time and on a budget.
Well, there you go. We like those words too.
Any further questions?
Yeah, one last question.
Sure.
Do you foresee any additional CA services that aren't included currently right now?
No, I think that we basically encompassed all of that as it relates to looking at the time that we have that's going to be expended for the rest of the project. And this should be the end of, as it relates to any additional funding needed for that.
One last question, because I can't do the math that quick. Is this the first time we've tapped into the contingency funds?
The contingencies as it relates, yes, from this board actually adding additional, of course, change orders come up, and that's where the contingency comes out of that. So as it relates to coming back to the board, yes, for
But
additional
we
contract.
have issued change orders that
Yes.
have drawn from the contingency that were below the board decision threshold,
And what's the board decision threshold?
300,000.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
The total of the other contingencies was about 150?
Yes, correct.
150,000 with the change orders prior to this one.
With that said, I think the Operations and Finance Committee is going to recommend and make a motion that we accept, wait, that says Connect Downtown Study. That's not it. Sorry. Okay, I was on 23. Yeah, no, I can't do that one. That's not my committee, I don't think. I'm sorry. No, this is a motion to approve the construction administration services for the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton North Nashville Transit Center. Item number MA 23042.
Great. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, we have 2 seconds. That's a fourth. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kia. I'm
work,
glad that the project is moving forward, and that Vivid One is doing a great job at helping the vendors and subcontractors get the job done, so I appreciate that. Next up for the Operations and Finance Committee is a discussion item with Katie Freudberg, who will be discussing our quarterly route performance report. Take it away.
Good afternoon, thank you. Today I'll be presenting the quarterly route performance report for July, August, and September of 2023, not 2024. That is incorrect in your board packet, which I just noticed. So I apologize, that was my mistake.
Wait, so the background, the top sentence, it's July, August, and September of 23.
Yes.
Okay.
I was a year ahead of myself, I guess. By next year, we're going to be over 100.
I was going to say that's probably not going to be the same numbers next year.
Things are not going well if they're the same numbers. As you can see, our ridership this quarter was over 97% of pre-COVID ridership, which is the highest number we've seen so far. Overall ridership. This is a little bit misleading because our pre-COVID comparison is actually the October, November, December quarter of the year of 2019. And we've been using that as our pre-COVID number because we had major service cuts of about 12% that started on October 1st, 2019. And then we didn't get another full quarter after that without COVID effects. So it's a little unfair to compare July, August, September to the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. But it is still our highest quarter post-COVID. Something that I was pretty excited about was that we had our first day of over 30,000 passengers since COVID on September 30th, so just barely made it. This is what's exciting to me. You'll see again that our on-time performance honestly continues to suffer. As I mentioned in the write-up, we did see a significant drop from the Broadway Bridge closure, which was to be expected. We should see that bounce back. You'll also notice that routes to the south, southeast have the lowest on-time performance outside of the Broadway Bridge closure. Not coincidentally, these are the routes that spend the most time downtown, which ties into Felix and Marty's presentation shortly. Oh, and Jennifer. Hi. Just kind of to reinforce that, if you look at the Route 6, so when a route's going outbound, their time spent downtown is, it obviously comes first in their trip. If you get, say, 15 minutes late in the first segment of your trip, it is very likely that you're going to be late for your entire outbound trip. So the Route 6, the outbound on-time performance is 74%. The inbound is 85%. So just kind of a perspective on the impact of that trip through downtown at the beginning of the trip. And we see that again in the 52, the 55, a huge difference in their outbound versus inbound travel times. You'll see, so I wanted to draw your attention to the Route 18 airport. We've seen this route continue to grow, 21% ridership increase over last year. It does have about 15% more service hours, so the ridership growth is outpacing the increase in service hours. On the 18 airport, about 25% of that ridership is going to the airport, and the remainder of passengers are going to destinations on Elm Hill Pike. So we have seen our ridership to the airport grow, but most of that growth has actually been on Elm Hill Pike. And so that's something that we want to look at in our next strategic plan is what we can do with service to the airport where that really becomes a viable option for people to get to the airport, and not just viable, an appealing option for people to get to the airport. And that growth is going to take additional frequency. Right now the 18 runs every 45 minutes. proximity to the airport, especially if people are carrying luggage, high visibility, so people think of it as their first choice, and reliability. Reliability is something that we don't have on the 18 right now, partly because of the trip through downtown and partly because of CSX at Arlington, which delays us quite often. One of the things that we're considering for looking at in our next strategic plan is the possibility of making that connection via Murfreesboro Pike, which may give us the opportunity to add in that frequency as well as that reliability as we're able to build out, hopefully, a BRT or other high capacity on Murfreesboro Road. And lastly, I'll just point out that this is the first time that the Route 70 Bellevue Connector, it started in August of 2023. You'll see that it had very low ridership, very low productivity, not unexpected for a route that's just starting out. We'll expect to see this grow over the next 2 years or so before we look at this as really a mature ridership number.
And that was the service that was added to serve James Lawson High
Yes,
School?
correct.
Got it, thank you.
And that concludes my report, unless you have any questions.
Thanks, Katie. Any questions for Katie about the quarterly performance report?
I have 2 comments. One is, this just shows how important the Connect Downtown initiative is. It just confirms it. And the second is, that airport route is such an opportunity. And to me, we got to get it right so we have a good product and the right frequency. But then we need to market it like crazy because, I mean, you know, these glitter people coming off on Thursday, if they're staying downtown, there's just no reason why they shouldn't hop on WeGo in downtown. So I think that's something we really ought to work with Dina, and because that's a huge opportunity, I think.
Yeah. Actually, it was what I was going to touch on and what Katie alluded to is looking at, so in the Murfreesboro Pike Corridor plan that the Cooper administration funded our development process for, the alignment would be, so that entire route would be downtown Sobro out to Global Mall site via Murfreesboro Pike and Bell Road with the spur along Donaldson Pike. So the route that Katie's alluding to, which would be Murfreesboro Pike, Donaldson Pike into the airport and back out, is already sort of embedded in that. So I think our thought process is we get a head start on that prior to the actual deployment of a facility. It helps us in 3 ways. It helps us, Janet, with what you're talking about, robust, frequent service to the airport. It helps us, frankly, with even as often as the 55 runs, with some overcrowding we have on the lower end of the route between Donaldson Pike and downtown. Because at that point, with decent frequency, you'll be running buses in that section probably over 5 or 6 minutes. And frankly, it'll also help us as we go for federal funding for some sort of high-capacity transit, because if we can jump those ridership numbers even higher, we're already in the 5,000 or so a day range on the 55, you know, which is really strong for that type of an application. But if we can build more ridership in that corridor, it gets even stronger.
And that would be a great early win to show that people are choosing 100% to hop on that thing for convenience. And so, great. That was my only question.
A quick question. I noticed in the report, it was mentioned that Monday ridership is dipping down. What do we equate that to?
I found that very interesting. We think that that's just due to people starting to work or kind of settling into hybrid work patterns where they maybe work from home on Monday and Friday now and come into a physical office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
They all come in on Wednesday. I couldn't get a spot in my parking garage yesterday. So I was like, what is this?
And Wednesday's our highest ridership day. Like you really do start to see those trends start to.
So I have to ask, because I'm so curious about this, what's the 10% jump in student ridership attributed to?
That we do not have a lot of insight into, other than students have been the slowest to return, like of the markets that we had pre-COVID. So we're actually still far below what our pre-COVID numbers were.
Oh, got it.
So we're hoping
Climbing
that will
back.
gradually tick up, and we'll get back to where we were
Got it.
before.
Thank you.
And Catherine, we are going to put together, once we have a little bit better data set, I know you'd asked for some background presentation on the STRIDE program and the schools partnership. So we'll put that together. We wanted a little bit more from this school year in terms of track records, probably next month or the month after.
So overall, I see this as a very positive and encouraging report for our ridership. I'm encouraged that the student ridership is up 10%. I know since last year, we've been wondering kind of like why the students haven't come back. And I know that 10% isn't the gates haven't opened and it's not a floodgate, but it's something and it's an improvement, and that's encouraging. Overall, I love seeing the ridership numbers increase. I don't necessarily like seeing the on-time performance slip so much, but I know that we're about to hear about how rearranging the downtown connection and mobility down there can help with that. So I really appreciate it, and I love this report. It makes me really anxious to see the next year's report and how much more we'll grow that ridership in another year. Thanks, Katie.
The other thing I would add is I've asked Katie in the future quarter reports, even though it isn't specifically your quote responsibility, to add our RTA routes, including the STAR in this report.
I think that I would find that very interesting.
Yeah, and generally, so whether it's Andy every month or Katie every quarter coming, we've generally been presenting really good news on the ridership front. We go to the RTA meetings and it isn't so good. The regional commuter ridership is still at only about 40% or so of pre-pandemic. So I do think it's kind of good to have that visual. It's kind of good to focus on, okay, and at the RTA board, we're talking a lot, whether it's through the STAR study or the upcoming service planning, or like the experiment, the pilot program with Nashville SC, is how might we redeploy some of those resources to be more effective. So I think it'll be an important part of the conversation.
I think so too, and I like hearing that. I do attend the RTA meetings, so I've kind of kept the pulse on that, and it's interesting the distance and the difference between the ridership adoption post-COVID. But I just will say that as I gave comment to the RTA board yesterday about Nashvillians, when they did the online survey for the Transit Alliance, and still 38% of those respondents said regional connectivity was one of their top mobility challenges. So looking at both side by side might be helpful, so I appreciate that.
And by the way, she always stays within her 3 minutes at those meetings.
At this point, I will hand it back to Madam Vice Chair, Chair for a day. Janet, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent report. I'm going to call the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee to order. And we've only got one quick action item that we'll do at the end on our board meeting schedule for next year. But Felix Castrodot is now going to give us the Connect Downtown update. And we hope it's good news in light of our last report. So, hey, Felix.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, yes, on to some more hopeful news about on-time performance. I know Jessica was ready to move to Connect Downtown earlier, but I was getting scared. Janet said a quick item. No. It's great to see you again, and it's believe it or not, it's been a year since we were before this board, reassuring you that transit was going to be looked at and it was going to be given the importance that it deserves in this study. So you're all familiar with Connect Downtown. It's a comprehensive effort to improve overall mobility in downtown, and a big part of that is transit, and it's one of the major challenges that we have as a system. But we have a slight change, last minute change, and since she hasn't been able to address the board, I'm going to introduce Jennifer Whelan. She is the managing director and principal with Nelson Niger, who is the consultant team leading the Connect Downtown effort, and she's the project manager for the project. We also have Marty Sewell, who is the planning director for NDOT. So he graciously allowed Jennifer to come and do his part to the board. So I'm going to tag team with Jennifer as we go through these, but the project is ready to, it's just released recommendations. And hopefully you'll see some good news about transit as part of these. So I'm going to let Jennifer take it from here.
Thank you, Felix.
was a very generous way to describe the switch that happened at the last moment. But I'm so pleased to have the chance to be here with you all this afternoon and to be able to share where we are with Connect Downtown. I feel like I could not have planned a better presentation to come right before ours in terms of setting up the challenges that we are facing. So I'm just going to jump right in. I do want to say a huge thank you not only to WeGo, but also to the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, who is leading the Connect Downtown, as well as our partners at the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Nashville Downtown Partnership. It is not always easy to have a four-headed client team, but I will say that this group has, despite differing opinions on things, really worked together well throughout the course of the project, which has enabled us to get to the point that we are at today, having released a draft plan for public review. We have just heard a lot about the mobility challenges, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But there's a couple of things that I do want to highlight in terms of the challenges. From a transit standpoint, Katie laid it out better than I could have. And one of the things that really jumps out at me when I think about these 6 challenges is something that Kenya said yesterday when we had the opportunity to meet with Iran and Kenya at the Urban League. And she said, as goes downtown, so goes the city and the county and the region. And it's so spot on. It's really, I mean, it's been a key piece of what we have focused on through this effort. And I think as you look at those mobility challenges, those challenges have ripple effects far beyond downtown, not only in terms of the transit system, but in terms of people having options to walk, bike, take the bus, in terms of the reliability of the system as a whole and what that means for people being able to get to work, to get to school, to pick up their kids. And then what it means in terms of economic development and commerce when the curb is a really congested part of the right-of-way and we don't have the space for people to be able to make deliveries, to pick up passengers, to be able to service the businesses and residents who are downtown. So that universe of challenges is what we set out to address through Connect Downtown. I do also want to just acknowledge and thank Jessica, as well as many members of the WeGo team, for serving on our Stakeholder Task Force and Technical Advisory Committee. Those folks have been huge in shaping this project. So we're sharing draft recommendations with you today. These are out for public review. I do want to stress for all of you and for anybody listening that these are truly draft recommendations. This is not one of those points in the process where I'm telling you they're draft and I really don't actually care what you think because we just want to be done. That is not where we are right now. No. There is a lot of opportunity for feedback, and we've heard a lot already over these last couple of days as we've had open houses, stakeholder conversations, and are really starting to understand where we may need to make some tweaks as we move forward. So to get to this point of draft recommendations, there's so many different pieces that have gone into it over these last 2 years. I mentioned our Stakeholder Task Force and Technical Advisory Committee, but within that bucket of engagement, we've had 3 rounds of public outreach, have had over 5,500 survey responses, as well as just many, many conversations with stakeholders, members of the public, business owners, residents, and so many other folks. There is a lot of technical analysis, of course, that has gone into this, a pretty significant existing conditions effort, a modeling effort, and then we're bringing expertise from around the country to help inform what we are proposing for Nashville. I just want to say, every community thinks they're unique. Nashville is indeed unique. There are things that are very different about this place, and it's not just the visitors. It is the fact that downtown, you have really constrained rights of way, which makes you a lot different than many of your southern peers. And there are just many things that make this particular planning process a little bit special, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from other places and take lessons learned. So that's been a key piece of it. And then, of course, all the work that's come before Connect Downtown, building on In Motion, Better Bus, so many other efforts, including the Vision Zero Action Plan, Walk and Bike. So we weren't starting from scratch. Somebody asked me last night at our open house, why are you focusing on downtown? And I said, well, if you look back at any of those other plans, there's a gray box over downtown, and it was time to fill in the box. So for those of you who are very familiar with In Motion, you know, we're finally getting to that point. I'm not going to talk much about the analysis or the modeling, but I do just want to say 2 quick things. When we look at both what the situation is today, as well as what the situation would be 10 years in the future, assuming that Nashville is going to continue to grow, it is so clear that doing nothing isn't an option. You all know that that's true today, but just imagine that we continue to try and put more people into this same system without any changes, without people having options, without people switching modes. It doesn't get better. And we know that transit is a huge piece of the solution. When we are talking about constrained space, transit is the most efficient way to move more people. You all know that, and that's really part of what Connect Downtown embraces in terms of thinking about how we get people to do something different. So we've grouped our recommendations into 5 big moves, and these are really structured to address the challenges that we laid out before. I'm going to hit on a couple of these, pass it over to Felix to talk more about the transit recommendations. But our focus here is, again, really trying to think about a system. Moving forward with just one of these big moves is not going to solve the problem. There is no silver bullet. Obviously, you would have done that already. So it is thinking about all of these together as a system. When we talk about managing congestion, NDOT is moving forward with a traffic management center, which will be open in 2024. And some of the key recommendations here include continuing to upgrade the system. Nashville has a transportation system that is quite outdated for the city that you are today, and that includes your signal system. So moving to adaptive signals gives NDOT the ability to really manage the system in real time. To, for example, give a bus a head start at an intersection so that you are moving ahead of traffic. To keep a traffic signal green for longer to move more cars through if you're trying to clear things after an event, or to give a pedestrian or many pedestrians more walk time as well. So adaptive signals are something that has value for everyone, no matter how you're traveling. So making those upgrades is a huge first step. We are also proposing a number of operational conversions, so conversions from one-way streets to two-way or vice versa. The reason for doing that is a little bit different on each street, but what we're trying to achieve is a way to move more people in the space that we have. And so, for example, by looking at 3rd Avenue northbound and 4th Avenue southbound, we have the ability to fit in some segments of dedicated transit lanes, some queue jumps, but also really importantly for those corridors, priority loading space and more sidewalk space. So it really is for each of these about how do we get the most we can get out of the right-of-way. Felix?
Thank you. So when we update the strategic plan, the first thing we're going to do is fill in that gray box. We finally have some good answers here. But as I mentioned earlier, downtown circulation is one of the main issues that we have in terms of system reliability, on-time performance. You heard it earlier. And the lack of transit priority in a lot, downtown corridors just causes our buses to get stuck with regular traffic. We are subject to the same detours that regular traffic is, so special events, road closures, so all that impacts that. It has a ripple effect on how our buses perform with the schedules. People miss their transfers. Access and connectivity to the neighborhoods gets impacted as well. So the plan proposes a system of mobility centers and transit priority corridors to help accomplish that circulation and improve the way we move in and out and through downtown as well. So the first piece in the mobility centers is a SoBro Transit Mobility Center that was identified in the city's transportation plan that was adopted in 2020. And the other is the East Bank Mobility Center, which is part of the plans that are taking place right now with the redevelopment of the East Bank efforts. If you notice, those are areas of downtown that are either growing a lot very fast or will be growing a lot very fast when those improvements happen. So the idea here is to start decentralizing our service the majority, as a hub and spoke system that we are, the majority of our routes go to one location, that's Rico Central. And the way that downtown is growing, Central is becoming kind of not that central anymore. So we have to start thinking, how can we better connect and integrate the system as it comes into downtown, into these mobility centers that can enhance transfers. It can make easier for people that are not necessarily going to Central to be able to go to other locations and transfer at the same time. We can redirect the routes there. The transit priority corridors connect all these 3 centers in the edge around downtown, and those provide bus lanes for the buses to be able to move separate from the regular traffic, and be able to increase your reliability and be able to move faster and better connect downtown in that sense for transit. And then there's those transit priority corridors. There's one on the west side, which is 8th Avenue, Russell Parks. And just an interesting fact about these, WeGo moves more people on buses in that segment than people in single occupancy vehicles at this point. So that's something to think about. We're already moving a lot more people, and that's what a lot of the focus of this project is about. And then you have the James Robertson connecting to the East Bank, and as part of the East Bank Boulevard, which is also being developed with accommodations for bus rapid transit. While that happens as well, we know we have some other issues in 3rd and 4th Avenue. And so there's some transit priority measures that are being identified to be able to give us a little bit better access moving through that facility and extending into some of the frequent transit network routes in the system. So this is kind of an idea, a concept of how routes can be reconfigured to utilize the transit priority corridors and the mobility centers. And the idea, again, is that not every route needs to go to Central directly, and you can stop by another route, by another center, and allow for those transfers, and depending where, the direction that they're coming from. This is also a key factor when you think about regional travel. The way that downtown employment is changing, and some other employment centers are happening, which is not in the core of downtown. This is something that we currently don't have the ability to serve quickly, as you have to go through downtown, you have to serve Central. But this allows the possibility for regional routes to be able to utilize these transit priority corridors as well, and better connect to other centers as they continue to grow regionally. This will definitely increase the amount of trips region-wide. As you see, 67% more trips. If you are in any of these transit priority corridors, you're probably going to see a bus coming every 2-3 minutes, potentially. The other thing that is a benefit for this is that these can be utilized by emergency vehicles in the case of an emergency. So that's another added benefit to these when you think about being able to move not only transit, but in the case of an emergency, that's a big choke point for them as well. I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, and I'll talk more about the phasing of the transit later.
All right, so how are we going to get people to those transit priority corridors? Part of that is creating complete networks. And so this is our focus on walking, biking, scooting, and other rolling facilities. We are proposing a complete connected network of mobility lanes. And when we talk about mobility lanes, you can think about them as slightly wider, protected, separated bike facilities. And the reason that we've started using the term mobility lanes is because scooting and people on scooters are a real thing. And while scooters may not be around forever, something will be. And so much of what we're seeing is that these devices that are electric and that are faster moving, trying to mix those with people on sidewalks, especially narrower sidewalks downtown, is not safe for anybody. It's also not safe for them to be mixing with general purpose traffic or buses. And so mobility lanes provide that separated, dedicated space. So you can see a network here that links to the Greenway network, that brings people into downtown, helps to move them around downtown, and then also moves them back out when they are ready to make that next trip. The other key thing that we've looked at in terms of improving the environment for people walking, biking, and rolling is focusing on ADA improvements, making some of those first last mile connections to the new transit priority corridors, and then also dealing with some of the grade changes that you have, particularly between the Gulch and the historic heart of downtown. I'll spend just a minute talking about the curb because there is so much that is happening at the curb, whether it is picking up passengers, delivering goods, or trying to get into to serve a business. Part of what we think is most important when it comes to the recommendations for Connect Downtown related to the curb is using a flexible approach so that the curb is not doing only one thing all day long. The uses change as the needs change throughout the day. So that, for example, in the very early morning, when there aren't a lot of rideshare pickup and drop-offs, there aren't a lot of passengers, the focus really needs to be on deliveries. It really needs to be on sort of that service aspect and getting downtown ready for the day. As we move later in the day, the uses change. The delivery vehicles want to be out of downtown. We need more spots for picking up and dropping off people, and then also making sure that people have good business access. So there's a lot within maximizing the curb, including thinking about valet programs, different types of time restrictions, other flexibilities, but that key piece is really how do we make the curb do double and triple duty and not just try and do one thing all day long. So when you bring all of this together, you get a map that is quite complicated, but really does focus on working as a system, serving people traveling by all modes of transportation, and linking to investments that are happening across the city and county and across the region. So when you think about how these investments link to the Murfreesboro BRT corridor or to the connections to the airport, you can start to see how this system really comes together and amplifies the projects that are underway at NDOT, TDOT, WEGO, and any other partners. So to wrap us up for today, Felix and I wanted to share just a couple of words about phasing. This is a 10-year action plan, and while we'd love for everything to happen in year one, that's just not how transportation projects get delivered, and nobody's got a money tree. So we are proposing 3 phases that will help to deliver this project. But another thing that I just want to say is, as we move forward, these phases should not be thought of as rigid. If funding becomes available, if there's an opportunity to leverage another project, things should move forward more quickly. We've made assumptions based on what we know right now, but again, you should take advantage of whatever opportunities present themselves. There will also be a lot more opportunity for public dialogue as we design a transit priority corridor, for example, and so this is not the last moment for people to be engaged. But we do have 3 phases, and Felix is going to just highlight the way that transit investments would be made in those 3 phases.
We know that this is somewhat conservative, and as Jennifer mentioned, they're not rigid. And I'll tell you that we are committed to make every effort possible to make sure that some of these, especially knowing the desires of the board that has been made known to us before when we talk about this project, wanting to see something happen quickly. But looking at how the transit, and these slides are just specifically about transit. There's others that we didn't include here that talk about some of the other elements. But the first phase can start as quickly as next year, and that will be addressing some of the transit priority needs on 3rd and 4th as we continue to develop the transit priority corridors. And that will also start looking at some of the other frequent transit network routes as well to move later on phase 2, which I think it's one of the most critical for us, implementation of the transit priority corridor on the west and James Robertson sides. And this will help expand service to the south and west sides in downtown, about 35% increase in trips, 31% increase in trips. At the same time, continue to develop priority in, as I mentioned, in the frequent transit corridors, and the design of the East Bank Mobility Center and the East Bank TPCs is going to be tied to the plans directly happening at the East Bank. So that's something that we've been part of the conversation of, but it's a little bit more complicated, if you will, in that sense as timing goes. And then phase 3 is some of it will be happening in 2030 and then extending beyond, but it'll be bringing it all together and completing that system of transit priority corridors and the mobility centers to be able to have that, accomplish that vision that we established for moving transit. And again, this will result in a 67 increase in regional trips in the system.
All right. I do want to say two quick things before I just wrap up with next steps. One is that when Felix was talking about the phasing and we're looking at the transit priority corridors, you might say to yourself, wow, this is a lot of state routes you're proposing things on. How does TDOT feel about that? And because TDOT has been a partner in this effort, we've had some really good conversations, and there is a path to moving these transit priority corridors forward, which we're very excited about. And that does give us, hopefully, the opportunity to maybe even expedite the West Side Transit Priority Corridor, depending on funding. And speaking of funding, the other question I've been getting a lot this week is, well, how are you going to pay for it? Of course, there are local funding sources available. There's state funding available. There's more federal funding available for transportation than there ever has been. But as somebody from outside who is tasked with making recommendations to the project partners, I will say that I firmly believe that Nashville needs a dedicated source of transportation funding to really be able to make these investments work over time. So, what
Amen. Were y'all waiting for that? Were you waiting for an amen? There you go.
Yes.
I was hoping for the gavel, but that's okay. So in terms of opportunities for people to engage, we hosted 2 open houses the last couple of days. There are a lot of briefings and stakeholder meetings happening over the next month or so. If you have a group that you'd like us to meet with, or you want to talk a little bit more, please do reach out. We are happy to sit down with anybody and have a conversation about these recommendations and hear feedback. The plan is available online. We've also got a short executive summary and a very short survey gathering people's feedback. That will be open until just before Christmas. And so we do really encourage people to take a few minutes and review the plan and provide us with some feedback so that we can make adjustments as we move forward. This is just a quick sampling of some of the stakeholders we've briefed. Felix and others had the chance to speak to WeGo operators not too long ago, which was really enlightening and very helpful. Lots of different downtown groups, and then of course the public at large is critically important because again, this is a plan that does not impact just downtown. It does impact the region, and so we want to hear from as many people as possible. We will take all of that feedback that we receive and process it as we head into the holidays and the early part of 2024. Our goal is to wrap up the very final action plan in January, February, and be able to bring that back for approval at various boards. So with that, Felix, what did I forget?
Oh, nothing.
Were you supposed to do that slide? Sorry.
No. This was perfect. I think it just reminds me that, as you can tell, this has been a very thorough process. Mm-hmm. It has probably extended beyond what we originally designed, but the reason for that is it's been a long timeline, and a project of this magnitude and profile, you have to make sure that you talk to everybody, especially you're talking about downtown. With that said, we'll come to you next month with an amendment to the contract and budget, but don't worry, NDOT said that they had that covered. So because we were the agency used to procure the project, you have to come to you for approval, but everything is taken care of. So I'll just notice that. But I think whatever you've seen, and if you've been involved with the project, you've seen how that's been very involved and exhaustive in the sense of making sure that all the bases are covered and everybody that has an opinion gets a chance to verbalize that and communicate that. But with that, we'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Excellent report. Jennifer, you did great. Marty, you gave a good news presentation. She did great. So I'm sure we all have questions. I'll start with mine, which is who decides, right? Does Metro Council approve it? Does the mayor put the stamp? Who has the final decision get made on how it all gets done? Come on, Marty, get up here, Marty.
Sorry, I'm suffering from a little bit of a headache today, so that's one reason I wanted to sit back too, but I do hate to not give good news.
You're good, you're good.
No, I do know that part of this is evolving since we haven't all these teams worked or organizations work together on one plan at the same time. We do plan to ask the Traffic and Parking Commission at Metro to take some action, and we'll also go to the Metro Council to take some action, but my assumption, and Steve, looking at you too, is that we would bring it to you all as well. That does require everybody to agree.
Sure.
And I think from what we've heard so far, we do have a lot of agreement, and so I think that should be sufficient.
Great,
Hope
thank
that
you.
helps.
Other questions,
Janet,
comments?
that would be the plan adoption for
Right.
specific projects, you know, like Jennifer was alluding to the conversation with TDOT about potential transit priority on 8th Avenue. You know, those could have their own approval process. So even if the plan's endorsed, there's still going to be
Individual
separate
projects.
processes to
Great.
get individual components approved.
Questions, comments? Ron, anything? I know, it's a lot, isn't it? I know. Yes, Margaret.
So could we go to the slide that shows the way the streets are going, you know, one of the first slides?
Oh,
You know, Second,
The third and
Third
fourth.
Avenue, and Fourth. So
That's it. yeah.
this is just so much work. I really hesitate to ask, but I'm going to ask. There's nothing on there about First Avenue, and the train is on First Avenue. And from Wego Central, you can go around Gay Street, which has been under construction for a while. First Avenue has been closed for a while. And it just seems to me that that is a really good way to have a transit corridor without cars. And one of the reasons why I say this, my office is in Germantown. Some of you have heard this a lot. I have employees who want to ride the train and can't get over there. And if we could get them off of I-40, we would have a whole lot of better life. So I'm just wondering, what's going on with First and the fact that the train's there? We've already kind of used to not going on there. Why are we not using Gay Street and First to get around?
You all can jump in too. It is a great question. And part of what we've thought about in terms of First, and I apologize that Riverside. I knew it. I knew if I said Riverside, that TV show sticks in my head. Riverfront Station is not shown on this map. I tried to get it added to all of them. But all of that is to say, First Avenue, I do think can be an important part of the network as a whole, an important part of the transit network. But I would suggest that it is probably most appropriate for a route or two, as opposed to the number of routes that would use a transit priority corridor. I also think that First is really important as just a great pedestrian space. It's important as a great biking connection. And with the future opportunity to revitalize and redevelop the riverfront, it felt a little bit premature to really direct the change on that through Connect Downtown. So all of that is to say, yes, I think we could absolutely operate some type of service up First.
So I just ask you to think about it. You know, you said these are drafts, and people want something now. And that's there now, and there are not cars on there. I mean, or you can figure that out. And Second is not that far from First. And, you know, there's a lot of retail and other things on Second, but there's not on First. And it just seems like to me we can, with the connectivity, we have two transit centers really, one with the train and one with Wego Central. You know, you can beef up the train a little bit maybe to make that more of, I've talked to Steve about this Wi-Fi and stuff like that, that people can, you know, feel more connected there. And we have bridges there, and it just seems like that's an approach.
Will you all please write that down on a piece of paper, because Margaret Bem said it, and no, it was great. It was such a great point. So, other questions, comments?
Thank you again for hanging in there, Jennifer, and all the partners moving this forward. I know it has taken longer than you initially set out, but I also know that you've done a really great job of really trying to listen to the communities and put that into some kind of comprehensive and comprehensible map that we can understand and access and wrap our minds around. I think that it could be potentially enormously transformative for downtown, the city, the region. I know that due to our current limited resources, that it would have to be this phased-in approach. I would love to see it happen a lot more quickly than 10 years. But again, I think that lies in your own outsider plea that Nashville gets some sort of dedicated funding source. Now, and it's not just internal people that live here now asking Nashville to get dedicated funding. It's the outside people saying we need it. How great is that? Anyway, thank you so much for that, Marty, Felix, and Jennifer. I've been with you since the beginning with these meetings, and I've just really I've loved to see the growth and the change, and the conversations in some of these rooms has been very robust. And I haven't seen anyone shy away from saying, why aren't we doing something on first? Just like that, just like Margaret just did. So it's been really great to be part of that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll have one. I think it's commendable to have 4 departments like that working together to look at something that is going to impact everybody regionally. So commend you guys for doing that. And I brought this up yesterday in talking with Jennifer, that there are pockets that are just right outside what we consider downtown, right outside of the Loop Interstates. And I'm thinking of like Shelby Avenue and Dickerson Pike and those other pockets where there's a lot of people, and I'm sure they have headaches about getting into downtown and getting out of downtown. So just sharing that and making sure that that is being addressed in some form or fashion when we're talking about this plan, because I think that ridership, and even to Margaret's point, people who are coming now from the change that's happening up Lebanon Road with multifamily housing, that are people that are going to be using downtown more. And so what does that look like, and how does that impact them to be able to get in and around downtown? So
Great, thank you, Aaron. Stand strong, you guys. Change is hard. You're going to hear from some people who just want to keep things the way they are, and just, I find it incredibly excited. So thank you again. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you. Okay, well, that concludes the best new initiatives and community engagement committee we've had in a long time. That was awesome. So we will move now to Vince Malone, who is the Chief of Staff and Administration. And we need to approve our board meeting schedule for the upcoming year. Hi, Vince.
Good afternoon. And item number MA 23043, approval of the 2024 board meeting schedule. We have a wonderful schedule in front of you for 2024, thanks to the great Monica House putting this together. As you can see, we are going to be in most places here in this building and not in numerous other sites. So I want to thank her for that. We do have 3 dates, April 18th, November 21st, and December 19th. That is asterisk on the schedule. That looks like we're going to have a little bit outside our order of meeting schedules there that we normally have. So we recommend that the proposed 2024 meeting schedule dates be adopted and approved by the board. Any questions?
Great. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve as presented?
motion to approve the 2024 MTA Board Meeting schedule.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any other discussion?
I do want to make one comment. Why couldn't we meet on Thanksgiving? You are my family now.
We can do that for you, Jessica. We'll bring
I'll be here
a
by
bucket
myself.
of fried chicken from KFC.
All right. Somebody invite Jessica over on Thanksgiving next week. That's great. We are each other's family. So, okay, if there's no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. I will hand it over now to Steve for our CEO report, and we're going to get you to your child's play right on time this afternoon. So,
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, for a day. First of all, following up on Felix and Marty's presentation, I know Felix and I, certainly Marty and most of the project team, have attended a whole bunch of meetings and briefings on this, and some in advance of the public release with a number of our council members in particular, especially those members who represent the downtown district and immediately adjoining districts. So, and the response has been pretty positive. I'm actually encouraged and optimistic, more optimistic than I usually am. I know, Andy, it's a low bar. We've also had, I want to, while Marty's, is Marty still here? Did Marty leave? Well, I was going to say nice things about him and his department. I think NDOT over the last year, the evolution has been incredible, that there's so much multimodal thinking, even apart from the Connect Downtown, which we've been kind of intensely tied at the hip. They're looking at several repaving projects around town where their project managers are saying, hey, maybe we have an opportunity to do a bus stop improvement or do segments of dedicated lanes. So that thought process is really taking hold. I remember when I first came, and frankly, with all due respect, people at Public Works didn't know how to spell bus, much less do anything with them. So just a shout out to Diana and her staff and Marty and the folks over at NDOT, because pretty quickly we've seen a major change in thinking. We're also talking about planning and endless planning, and actually touching on Iran's point about the corridors. So we've always looked at, we've done all these corridor studies, West End, Gallant Pike, Murfreesboro is coming up, Nolensville Pike, and as Jennifer alluded to, they always kind of led into the gray box downtown. So the intent is, once we can kind of solve that puzzle, it gets much easier to start figuring out what to do. In fact, we've actually kind of delayed the Murfreesboro Pike Corridor project in large part to see what comes out of Connect Downtown, because hopefully it'll answer a lot of questions for us. But we are about ready to start kicking off our in-motion update, which is due. And again, we'll be teaming up with NDOT and Metro Planning to undertake that. So kind of like Connect Downtown, we anticipate that we will be the contracting agency for the consulting effort, and we'll address the partner contributions and what have you through a memorandum of understanding that I think we expect to bring next month, right, Felix? The MOU, yeah. Yes. Yep. So you can expect to see that in about a month. With respect to mayoral and council transition, the mayor's transition task force, including the mobility task force, are going to be issuing their reports this upcoming Tuesday. It's a public event, so if you can attend, we'd certainly encourage you to do so. I plan to attend. Thank you. I forgot to write down the detail. So certainly encourage that. In addition to all of her brilliant presentation and analysis for today's report, Katie and her staff have been aggressively working on service restructuring proposals in the North Nashville area for our spring service changes that'll coincide with the opening of the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. We got to come up with a quicker name. We should just call it RIP. So those are out for public comment now. We expect to bring a service recommendation to you in January for implementation in the spring. Overall, the service up there will increase by about 80%, and a total of 8 routes will be affected, including the new Trinity Lane Crosstown, which will be kicking off in the spring. Margaret and her staff and Rick Rodriguez and Renuka and I have been tirelessly working, off and on revisions to the board advertising policy to kind of actuate our community impact partnership program. So we do expect we'll be able to bring those recommendations to you in December. I participated in a panel discussion on transportation funding and needs of the region with Leadership Tennessee with several folks this past month, and the conclusion of the group was we really need dedicated funding. Surprise, surprise. Wow. She never
We have to all start going, amen, together.
Can you have that as a finding in our next audit report, Erica? Tell the OIG to go suck on that. Okay, sorry. Just a little auditor humor, I guess. The transit management section of the American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officials, another mouthful, had a meeting in Nashville. Basically, state transportation officials from all over the country who oversee transit programs, mass transit programs. So TDOT, AASHTO with TDOT's encouragement invited us to participate. So I got to give a little presentation. And then Andy and a whole bunch of our folks conducted a tour with the group of Central. I wasn't able to attend the tour. I saw the pictures and knew quite a few of the folks. So we had definitely some of the transit celebrities from around the country attend that tour. So we got pinged. Somebody must have taken offense to my comment.
They want to audit you now.
Ed and I, coming back to ground. Ed and I participated in our mid-year budget review with Metro Finance. It went very smoothly. We've got, due to retirements and so on, we have quite a few new folks in the finance department who are, involved in our stuff. So we're going to be hosting some tours of our facilities because, frankly, it makes it a whole lot easier to talk about projects and budget initiatives when you can kind of see it and feel it. On the RTA side, we're continuing to advance our land acquisition for property in Murfreesboro for a park and ride lot there. Several of us attended a groundbreaking a couple weeks ago for the City of Murfreesboro Transit Systems new transit center and operations facility. Jessica was there. So that was a great event, and the property we're in the process of acquiring is immediately next door, so it's going to be a super connection to the city system. When we talk about regional connectivity, that'll be a good thing. Unfortunately, Nashville SC's season ended a little sooner than everybody wanted it to, but we did have the opportunity to test service from Murfreesboro and Antioch into the Nashville SC, the last 4 Nashville SC games. Operationally, it worked pretty well. We learned some lessons, and I think we've got a good opportunity to build that relationship with the team next season in a more comprehensive manner. And the Hatch Consulting Group continues their future vision study for the WeGo Star. In fact, earlier today, we met with them and with the railroad to review some of the scenario modeling and to see how that could interact with freight, and that's gone pretty well. So we expect to be presenting to the RTA board in the near future and then going back out to the public. And then finally, I want to thank Gail and everybody who participated in our, dedication of the Elizabeth Duff Transit Center at WeGo Central. We had a great turnout of elected officials and family. If the Duff family isn't the most delightful family in Nashville, then I'm not sure who would be. They turned out in force. It was really, really a fantastic event for a fantastic lady who happens to have a great family as well. So, but unless there are any questions, Madam Chair, I think you want to shut down my report at this point.
Thank you. Great report. And I want to give a shout out to Renuka. The media coverage of the dedication was extraordinary. So thank you for that. And every time I drive by that center, it just makes me happy. It makes me smile. So great job. I've only got kind of 3 quick points. One is thanks for your patience for the newbie here. And you're going to get me again in December, so maybe I'll get better. So thank you for that. Number 2 is we really are entering an incredibly exciting time for transit and mobility in Nashville. Every time I run into Mayor O'Connell, he says we're going big on transit, and I just think it's going to be a really exciting time. So looking forward to that meeting on Tuesday, and then we're all ready to go when we hit go. And then the final thing I would say is we are entering our season of Thanksgiving, and I was thinking about that today as I was driving over here. And like Jessica, I'm just so thankful for this board, Steve, for your leadership, Margaret, for keeping us straight with street legal. We're street legal here. But more than anything for this team, I mean, the amount of work and the dedication that you put in every single day, day after day, is just mind-boggling to me. So I am thankful for that this year, and I think I speak for the board that we are all so thankful for each of you. So hopefully you have a wonderful break, and we will see you back here in December. And I'm going to hit this gavel because it's really fun. I'm going to do it. Meeting adjourned.
Well done, you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.